Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it. Are you planning to sell your business in the next 3 to 5 years? Then you already know it's not just about finding a buyer, it's about actually protecting what you've actually built. That's where our sponsor, Adam Benedict, comes in. They're one of the leading premier M&A legal firms trusted by founders to simplify complex exits, protect value, and deliver results. Now, if you want a smart, smoother, and strategic exit, visit adambenedict.co.uk. Growing requires a lot of energy and a lot of resources, okay? It also is not sustainable over long periods of time. It's physically impossible to continue to grow for long periods of time. It's a bit like running a sprint and not ever stopping. Eventually, you're going to run out of oxygen.
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for today's leaders who want to get ahead and stay ahead because we believe great leaders aren't born or made, they're always in the making. I'm your host, Damon Lembi, 2-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million individuals. Today, joining me is Adam Strong. He's better known as the business strategist. He's a best-selling author, entrepreneur, international speaker, and the host of the Business Strategist podcast. I'm looking forward to discussing with Adam, how do you break past your revenue goals? Why personal identity, fear, and ego hold back even the best CEOs? And how to build consistent demand in your business while also reclaiming your time. So Adam, you've seen founders stall out. Is confusing growth with scale one of the biggest reasons why they stall out?
Well, actually, I believe that there's definitely confusion between what growth is and what scale is. But I think the real premise as to the reasons why, well, there's a few things actually. Let's explore that. So the first thing is clarity. And I talked about this on many different podcasts because if you're not clear in terms of the direction that we're going in as a company, if you're not understanding what your mission, vision, and values are, if you're not understanding and the whole team doesn't know and they're not aligned, there's going to be a real problem. And clarity doesn't just go back to what you are as a company. It goes back to your marketing messages, how you engage with your clients and customers. It goes back to like what you stand for, what's the legacy. So it's amazing to me, right, Damon? It's amazing to me that companies forget what their purpose really is. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they really forget that. So I think that's the first thing. The other things that I'll mention actually, that they make some common mistakes. So a lot of founders make a lot of common mistakes scaling up. I'm certainly one of them. You may be one of them too. I'm a serial screw up and I am not afraid to tell you guys, okay? I just wanted to say that, right? But I think if I took it from my personal perspective, I've seen common patterns that a lot of founders and CEOs do exactly the same. Let me give an example. Micromanagement, right? We all believe, like founders and CEOs believe, that we can be the jack of all trades, not master of none, okay? We've got to, do marketing. We've got to do sales. We've got to do outreach. We've got to do branding. Like literally, we've got to know everything and everything, okay? Doesn't work like that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the biggest thing that I have found from a personal perspective is fear. Let me go into that a little bit, yeah? Now, the stats are, and maybe you don't know about the stats here, but let me just give you a bit of an eye-opener here. Less than 18% of all business owners exit from their business. It's a pretty low figure. And it's only 18% because most of the time, the companies are in a distressed form anyway. And if you interview those CEOs a year later, 90% of those people regret from even doing it. Now, less than 48% of people, Damon, have an exit strategy or an exit plan in place. Quite shocking, right? So if I asked you, like when you wanted to exit your business, right? An exit means different things to different people, yeah? And a lot of people believe that an exit plan or an exit strategy is like, oh, I'm going to sell my business and whatever it might be. That's the perceptional reality. But that's not always the case, because your ideology of an exit is probably very different from mine. Would you agree?
I think so.
Yeah. So, and it's different in the context of, but everyone is also on a different journey. Yeah. So there are 3 stages to an exit. Stage 1, the founder and the CEO. You need to have a business that doesn't rely on those people, right? That's stage 1. Stage 2, profitability, maximizing profitability, systems and processes. And stage 3, getting the business ready for sale. Yeah. So there's 3 stages. And I think where a lot of the founders and the CEOs make the biggest mistakes is they don't have in their mind what their ideal exit is. They have this fear of like, holy shit, like I'm going to retire. And when you speak to an entrepreneur like me or you that's been in the game for so long, that sets fear into our hearts. Because I could never think about retiring, right? I'm sure you're probably the same, right? Would you agree?
I have no interest in retiring.
Exactly. But a lot of people believe that an exit means I am retiring from service. So again, there is a lot of strategic and mindset shifts that have to happen. And you have to really explore that. I was speaking to a lovely lady yesterday, and she specialized in this specific area of working with founders. And I don't know if you've ever been in the armed forces at all, or you've known someone. No,
I have several friends who have been, but absolutely.
Okay, so your several friends, they may have been in the Marine Corps or in the Army or whatever it might be, okay? They've been in the Army for, I don't know, 10, 20 years or whatever it is. Now, my uncle, he was also in the Army, and he was in the Army for 25 plus years, long time. And one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest challenges is, I'm going to leave the Army. What am I going to do with my life? There's this kind of emptiness around it. Does that make sense? There's this emptiness. There's this like, they feel lost.
Oh, because they feel like it's part of their identity, right?
Correct.
They've stuck themselves in this place where this is my identity. If I give this up, I'll be lost, or it's been so long. What if I'm not even capable of doing something different?
Exactly right. You're absolutely right. So you kind of have this identity crisis going on. And the main reason, my belief is that one of the main reasons why so many more people are not exiting is because they have exactly that problem.
So how do you help them with that? But before you answer that question, Adam, don't you think some of it has to deal with ego, in the sense like, look, there's no way somebody else could run this business as well as I do. I've been here so long. I know what's going on. And that really puts them at a detriment, because it was like the first thing you said is that when somebody wants to, acquire your business, it's got to be in a place where they can do so and move forward without the founder and CEO.
Yeah. You're bang on the money, 100% bang on the money, because if you speak to the majority of founders and CEOs, now I'll be one of them and you'll probably be another. And, a lot of those conversations is there's no one out there that can replace me, right? That's a mindset shift that needs to happen, because you are set in stone. You've been working in the trenches for so long, and you've been in a routine, and you've created these habits, right? And what that done is it's kind of given you this, it's kind of develops kind of a fixed mindset.
Absolutely.
That you believe there's a belief system.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the thing is, then you put limitations on yourself.
To you, my darling.
No, to you.
The Roses were living the dream.
More champagne for me, please.
Until it all came crashing down.
He got fired.
Fired?
From the director of Meet the Parents.
You're a failure. Women don't like that.
If you need a shoulder or an inner thigh to lean on.
On August 29th.
I just want the house.
We want everything.
Wow.
Stop.
You stop!
And see The Roses.
These people.
The Roses. Rated R. Under 17, not a minute without parent. In theaters everywhere, August 29th.
Because there's a belief system so ingrained into your subconscious that it must be done this way, and it can't be done any other way.
But what do you mean by putting limitations on yourself?
So when I say limitations, what I mean is because you believe something is done in a particular way, there's no other way of doing it elsewhere.
Fixed
Does
mindset.
that make sense?
Know-it-all
Fixed mindset.
Yep.
Absolutely. But it's a limitation because if you believe something is like, if we take, like I was a big fan of Lego when I was younger, and I loved the creativity around Lego. And you used to have those, and when I was a kid, I used to save up my pocket money, and I used to get a Lego set. And with the Lego set, you'd come with a large instruction manual, right? Yeah, it would have numbers on them, and it would say if you follow the numbers from 1 to whatever it is.
I got a 3-year-old, 7-year-old. I'm very know a lot about Legos. Let's put it that way.
There you go. Exactly. Right. But so you see your 3-year-old, right? And so his belief is that, okay, if I start from here and I follow through the numbers, I'm going to get the finished product. And it's true. But guess what? It's only one way
Exactly.
to create that model, right? So if we look at it from founders and CEOs, okay, and the question is I want to be able to scale up and exit, okay, there's not just one way, is there?
No, there's not. There's multiple ways, but you have to be open-minded to be able to see what's out there and not be so stuck in your own way to thinking that it's either my way or the highway.
There you go. And you hit the nail on the head. So what I tend to do is I call people's BS out, right? And I challenge the way that they're doing something, because really what it starts with is it starts with the way that we are as people, okay? And one of the things that I love doing with a lot of founders and CEOs is I will challenge them based on, okay, so these are your aspirations, these are your wants, these are your desires. And they believe that there is a set way of doing that. And I will say, well, I don't know, have you thought about doing this way? Or have you thought about doing this way? And it's not like I'm playing devil's advocate. What I'm saying to them is that, have you thought about it doing this way? Because if you did it this way, it might be a little bit quicker, or it might make you a bit more happy, or whatever it is. So I try to not give people the answers. I try to give them perspective so they can work it out for themselves, if that makes sense.
And what's your success been with that? Do you find them open to trying things new?
Do you know what? It depends from person to person, and it also depends on a number of things, Damon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let me give you an example. I've got a client of mine. She works in the law industry. And when I first met her, I mean, bless her, she is like really true giving, super qualified in her industry. She's like the kind of like top one. Do you know what I mean? In what she does. When I said so her premise is that she wanted to grow the firm and, and attract higher ticket clientele. And I said, well, have you thought about doing this way than this way? And she's like, no, not really. I'm not comfortable with this. I said, okay, well, tell me why you're not comfortable. She's like, because, and so when we started exploring, she lacked confidence. That was the biggest thing. She lacked confidence. And she lacked confidence because of something that happened back in her childhood.
Okay.
Yeah. It all stemmed back to what happened in her childhood experience. And so that has then translated into the way that she makes decisions on a day-to-day basis, right? Whether it be positive and negative, but also she finds it very difficult to take on new challenges. She sees that making mistakes is a bad thing, right? She believes that it's like it creates such a big fear, it paralyzes her thinking. But then I might speak to someone like yourself who's completely different. You may have a completely different experience. So it all depends on the individual and their experience, and really kind of everyone's got fear. Would you agree? Everyone's got fear?
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm curious to see how often the fear is related to you come in and you're like, look, we got to pivot. We got to do things a little differently. Maybe we need to prune our product base. And the fear comes into, well, what happens if we do that and we go out of business? Is that what happens quite often?
Not necessarily. I think when people come to me, what tends to happen is that if I'm taking on a new client, it doesn't instantaneously happen. Normally that client would probably be following me on LinkedIn or on podcasts or whatever it might be for probably about 3 to 6 months generally. They might And I'll give you a really good example of this. So I recently attended a M&A event in London. It was a networking event, and within the room there were people that were looking to buy and sell businesses. Very casual, just networking, couple of drinks in the pub type of thing. So it was very, very laid back, and there was some food. And so a friend had recommended I attend because this is the space that I sit in. And the way that I network is I stand back and I observe. And the reason I do that is it's because I'm a bit of a strategist. I like to observe people's behavior and the way that they interact with people. So I did that. I was standing in the corner, minding my own business, having a bit of food, and a chap come over to me, right? And he goes, "I see what you're doing." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "You're scanning the room." I went, "Yeah, that's the way I do things." And then he opens his blazer up, and he pulls out from his blazer a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, guess what? Is my LinkedIn profile. 2 pages of my LinkedIn profile. He goes, "I've done extensive research on you." I went, "Oh yeah." He goes, "You are one of 2 people that I wanted to meet at this event today." I went, "How come?" He goes, "I love the stories that you write. I love the content that you create. It really resonates with me." He goes, "I've been following you for a while. I might not have engaged or commented, whatever it is, but I've been observing." I went, "That's nice." He goes, "I believe you can really help our firm." I mean, great. Well, let's have a conversation, see where it takes us. I can't make any promises. And it's all kind of like magically gone from there. We've already had a couple of meetings, by the way. But that was just a month ago, just from doing that.
I think a really good learning lesson right there for our listeners is around personal branding, where you put out content, and if you're consistent with it and you're putting out good content that's giving and helping others, even if you don't get immediate response at them, even if it doesn't go viral and you don't get a bunch of likes or comments, people are recognizing it, and it creates moments like you just had. Now, I think it's hilarious the guy printed it out and had it on there, which is great. What kind of help did he need based off the conversation you've had with him?
So he was one of the founders of a legal firm in London. So one of the things that they wanted to double down on was working with within corporate law. So looking at the sale of acquisitions of businesses effectively. So that's that's where they were making most of their revenue as a law firm. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to double down on that because he could see that I was specializing in this particular field. So not only did it surprise me, as you mentioned, which was really refreshing for someone to do their homework beforehand. But, when I think about this is a really important point here. I used to believe that just depending on referrals and recommendation is completely untrue. I used to believe it was. I used to believe that was the only way to get business. Not knowing that actually the importance of creating a digital footprint and building a personal brand is probably ever more important than it ever has been. Now, I guess the question is that when we post content, and I use this as an analogy, is every time you post content, it's like a lottery ticket. When you post content, okay, that's one entry. That is one lottery ticket. Now, you can guess what? The lottery tickets are unlimited, okay? But that lottery ticket, you could be drawed out, and that could be your best client. They could come to you and they're like, "I believe you can help me." Great, okay, fantastic. And they're not going to argue on cost. They're going to pay premium because they know you, they trust you, they've been following you, and it makes the whole thing so organically smooth that they're going to be one of your raving fans. And that's what I have found.
What would you say? I want to take it back to professional services companies that are stuck. Okay. Somebody comes to you, whether they're a CPA or a consultant, and they're like, "Adam, I've been reading your content. I've been watching your videos. There's so many things in there that are fantastic. My organization's been stuck at 3 million in sales for 10 years. I'm frustrated. I really want to grow, or I want to scale. Where do I start?" What do you say to them?
Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity to make you aware of a brand new tool that we've just created called the Exit Readiness Assessment. Now, it is for founders and CEOs that are looking to exit from their business operations. Now, it doesn't matter even if you're not looking to exit right now, I would highly recommend to go and take the assessment straight away. It helps you to identify areas in your business that you need to work on to help you towards that exit strategy. And at the end of it, you get a personalized report on some of the areas that you're doing particularly well in and some of the areas that you need to make some improvements to. Make sure you head over to readytoexit.scoreapp.com. That's readytoexit.scoreapp.com. Enjoy.
Yeah,
It's a good question. So one of the things that we have to do, one of the things that I tend to do with a lot of clients is I like to use tools and resources to help identify
while they're stuck.
which area of where they're stuck. So that we need to identify what are the stress points in the business, where are the improvements need to be made. So one of the things that we do is, for example, we've created like a quiz, for example, where we can, where we've got 5 areas within the business that helps us to identify that we can use as benchmarks to see which part of the business is in real need of improvement. Okay. And so when we're using that, it then produces a personalized report for the client or the prospect, and it gives them personalized results based on the answers that it gives. So that is one way, is to create. We've got to be self-aware. We've got to know where to make those improvements to. Once we've identified that, then we can then create a strategy and reverse engineer about how we're actually going to go about doing it.
That does make sense. But my question for you is, what are those categories that you're looking at? Is it like product, personnel? What are those categories? Profitability?
Yeah, good question. So the first area that we look at is clarity, okay, which we kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I like to look at is the team itself. So, do they have the right people in the right places, or are there missing who's, should we like to call it, within the team? All right. So we need to look at the team. The third part of that as well is, I'm just trying to think now, leadership. So leadership personalities, leadership roles, et cetera, et cetera. That also intertwines into things like culture, because we have to deal with people. The fourth one, which you kind of mentioned, which is the product ecosystem itself. So that's the fourth part. And then the last part is around systems and processes. So it's the framework itself. How do we make more efficiency? How do we make more productivity and stuff like that? So that's what we tend to work with. But sometimes there may be a business that they don't always depend on, like they may be more stronger in one area compared to the other. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it completely depends. One of the things that I love to do is to personalize and tailor-made a exit plan based on the business itself, because not every business is different, right? Every founder has a different ideology of what the exit is. So we have to be very personalized. We have to be very, very strategic in the way that we do things. So yeah. And also because I'm working very much in the professional services industry, one of the things that I've identified is that a lot of the people in that profession is that they're extremely knowledgeable and extremely good at what they do. Now, if we look at, say, a CPA, for example, or an attorney or whatever it is, they know everything about that industry. Very good at what they do. What they tend to lack is business acumen. Would you agree on that?
I do agree on that. What I've found is that a lot of times they're super technical and you have a ton of experience in that, but they're very weak when it comes to sales and marketing. But they think that their product will sell itself, which is, you could disagree with me, but I don't see that happening. You could have the best product in the world, but if you're not getting out there and getting in front of people and showing how you could help solve their challenges, you're going to be stuck with a great product with no buyers.
I would agree on that. I mean, listen, you've heard of the analogy of, for example, if we look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's is a global company. They don't sell the best burgers. Would you agree on that?
I like them, but I agree with you. Yeah, of course.
Right. But there are better burgers out there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? So, but if we look at, ultimately at the end of the day, the reason why McDonald's wins is because not only do they have a sales and marketing powerhouse, it's because they have all of the ticks in the boxes. They've got brand, they've got loyalty, they've got everything that you need as part of a successful. This is why the franchise model is so successful in McDonald's. But then you may have, a great burger joint in the middle of Alabama, for example, right? They may do the best burgers in the state, but if you've got a crappy marketing strategy and no brand awareness, guess what? No one's going to know who you are,
and nobody's going to know who you are at all, right?
Exactly. So it doesn't matter like who. The people that win, it doesn't matter how excellent or you don't have the best product in the world. McDonald's is a classic example of that. What they do good is exceptionally good at is systems, processes, all the things that generally a lot of professional services industries don't do particularly good at. So you mentioned that.
Yeah. So let's go back. $3 million company. The CEO founder has been at it for 15 years. They would like to exit. Their idea of an exit is start something new, sell off, maybe stick around for a little bit, but sell off and then maybe start something new, get in consulting, get into fractional work. Do you recommend when it's possible to bring in a new CEO so the founder can step back out of it to help a couple of years before the exit?
I mean, normally you would need more who's anyway. So it could be a COO, it could be a COO. Sorry, a COO or CEO, or it could be just a manager, depending on which industry you're in, right? But normally this, and I was actually speaking about this on a podcast about 3 weeks ago, and this particular phase of finding what I call your right-hand man or your right-hand woman, this phase can take anywhere between 18 and 24 months. It's not a quick process. So if you imagine this, you've been working in your company 30, 35 years. You're ready to hand over the reins to somebody else. You got a lot of trust issues because you're just not sure if there is a who out there that can do what you do. Okay, there is, but you're not sure. Okay, but you're willing and you're open to explore the idea. And in this scenario, what I would tend to do is I would look for someone who you can gradually bring in to the company. So they may have. And really that person needs to be able to shadow you what you do. They need to be able to offer some insight. They need to see how you operate and whatever it might be. Then they get an idea of how you operate. Then, you as a founder then need to get an idea of, is this person truly capable? Are they aligned to my personal values? This is very important. If they're not truly aligned, they don't understand where you guys are going, it's just simply not going to work. So there has to be trust, there has to be transparency, and there has to be this opportunity where you are empowering somebody else to take over. But it's only going to work if you step away. And that's the hard part. That's generally the hard part. It's a bit like, you've got kids and I've got kids, right? I've got older kids as well as young kids, by the way. And one of the hardest parts of being a parent, right?
Oh, yeah.
You haven't, I'm not sure if you've experienced this before, but the hardest part of being a parent is as they get older and older and older, they become more and more independent. And that letting go is like, oh, shit, they're going to college. Oh, crap. Oh, my God. It's like, where did the time go? So it's a little bit like that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like it becomes personal. And this is why we spoke about at the very beginning, which is understanding the strategic shifts that are needed in order to really kind of get that better understanding.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And people do take it personal. And I guess maybe sometimes you probably see founders that talk out both sides of their mouths where they say, hey, they want to exit or they want to step back, but then they don't make that mind shift change that you're talking about. And they say one thing, but they're still meddling and just won't step back.
What that does is is that people then tend to walk around like they're on eggshells. Yeah, because it's like, oh no, he's kind of looking over our shoulder. There's this kind of distrust. There's this insecurity around the culture of that. And it's just simply not going to work because You don't want to feel like, if you put your foot out of line, like you're going to make a mistake, like you don't want to be shouted at, or you don't want to feel like, but you've got to make that transitional phase. It's the only way to work. And the best way to kind of get around that is to really kind of think about, if you weren't working anymore, if you didn't have the opportunity, but you were still making money, but you weren't actually involved in the operations, what would you do with that time? Would it be more philanthropy? How would you make more impact in your industry? What purpose do you want? So it's getting a better understanding of what, if you had all of this time in the world, what would you actually do it with? How would you train people to be better and stuff like that? So, and again, I think this is very important, a very important topic to talk about as well.
When it comes to, people can talk about exits all they want, but if their revenue is not there, if their growth isn't there, they're going to have a hard time with it. So how does somebody go from 3 million to 4 million? And can you do that, again, professional services, without just continuing to hire more all the time, right? Because if your revenue goes like this, and I'm looking up, and your hiring goes up like this, then your profitability is not going to change. It may even get worse. So what advice do you have for our listeners out there who are stuck with thinking the only way we can get more revenue is to keep hiring all the time?
Yeah. And it's a really good point that you made there, and I'm so glad you brought it up. So there are a lot of subtle differences between scaling and growing. Okay. So when we think about growing requires a lot of energy and a lot of resources, but it also is not sustainable over long periods of time. So, and the reason it's not sustainable is because you just plateau anyway, or you go down. Okay. It's physically impossible to continue to grow for long periods of time. It's a bit like running a sprint and not ever stopping. Eventually you're going to run out of oxygen, right?
Or you collapse.
Exactly. You're going to collapse, right? So you're going to burn out. So it's not physically possible. So when it comes to scaling, we need to look at, you may have a business that has revenues of, I don't know, $5 million or whatever it is, but their profitability margins might be so small. So then what we then have to do is we need to look at, how do we then scale what we've got? We've got good revenue. How can we become more efficient? How can we become more cost effective? Can we, if we're in a product service-based business, for example, can we renegotiate with our vendors? We're looking at ways in where we can maximize our profitability. And that's not necessarily adding more people, okay? So I've come across businesses that have a high employee count and their profitability is very, very low, which tells me one of two things. Most of the team is not even needed. And number two, then the way that they're operating is not very efficient.
If you have to have so many people to do that amount of work and you have no profitability, something's wrong.
Correct. Exactly. Something is wrong. So then we got to identify which part of the business is most profitable. Okay. And I like to use the exercise, and you might have heard this before, is if you've got a piece of steak, is to trim the fat. Okay. Make it lean. Okay. That's what we've got to do as part of stage 2 of exit, is to be able to make our machine, our operation more leaner. Okay. Now, if there are certain tasks or activities that are taking up a large amount of the team's time, for example, can we use a tool? Can we streamline it? Can we outline it? Do we need... One of the things in professional services that I have found is that they have too many personalities of the same personality.
Good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they may have who's, which are very, very left-brained, very analytical, but they're not so good at the creativity side of stuff, which means they're going to lack innovation. Then they're going to lack ideas for business growth. Yeah. You may have a professional services firm which are hugely knowledgeable, but have a very more authoritative leadership culture. The big challenge with that is then you're going to have a lot of masculine energy crush into each other, a lot of testosterone, yeah? And that's never good either, right? Because then you're going to have probably less empathy available within the business. So people are going to think that you're a bit of a douchebag, yeah? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Right? So you've got to make sure that you've got a wide range of who's with different personality styles, and you've got to make sure that everyone is singing off the same hymn note in terms of like direction,
Again, clarity.
roadmap, clarity, right? Transparency. Okay. So I hope that kind of answers your question that you asked earlier.
No, I think it does. And you may have other tools, but one tool I kind of like is the Working Genius tool that Patrick Lencioni has, where you can kind of see, okay, we have all these left brain people, but we're missing this, and it kind of puts it in different windows we could see. I'm sure like there's plenty of tools out there to assess that. When it comes to becoming more efficient and working with these professional services companies, I mean, are you seeing a lot more AI being incorporated to help these companies become more efficient and scale?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the answer is yes and no. So probably not the answer that you're asked for it. So there are two spins to this from what I have seen. No, because they believe that they see AI as a threat. Okay. So and ultimately it's obviously not a threat. We know it's not a threat. The professions that use it well, they're the ones that's riding the wave that will do particularly well. Okay. My belief is that last year was kind of like riding the surf. So riding the wave. So you were kind of like experimenting, playing around with some tools to enhance your business and stuff like that. This year, you've probably found some tools which you need to double down on. But if you have decided that, you know what, I'm not going to use AI in our firm or whatever it is, big mistake. You will be left behind 100%.
You fall into that fixed mind category we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. So
Correct.
What's an example of a customer you're working with who is using it well in the professional services industry?
Yeah, so I've got a client right now, and he's an IT consultant, believe it or not. So he works in the IT industry, very specific niche, works as a, what do you call it? Like a kind of a CIO role. Yeah. And the great thing about his business is that his business is capped, which means he can only take on a certain amount of clientele before he's full. So you can only take on 4 or 5 clients at a time. Yeah. So it's very high ticket, very specialized services, and that's just the way his business is. And the way that he's embraced AI is, using various tools to improve efficiencies. And he's extremely left brain, by the way, extremely left brain person, as most IT people are. But he's really embraced it because he's using, like, for example, a lot of LLMs, which, and what he's done is he's been programming those LLMs to make them more to articulate, like, for example, he might write a post, say a ChatGPT or whatever it might be, is there to enhance or improve his writing skills. And what's really interesting about the content that he creates, it's so niche because most IT consultants are really crap at marketing, really crap at social media marketing more specifically, that LinkedIn loves him. So every time that he posts content, not only does he get huge amounts of engagement, he gets a lot of inbound inquiries when he creates just from content alone, because he's in that niche and LinkedIn favoritizes that particular type of content. And he's then rewarded because he's educating people at the same time. So I hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And there's 2 things I think that's important in there. One is the niche, having a niche. Because if you're trying to cover too much, whether it's LinkedIn algorithms or just your customers trying to figure out what you do, and sometimes there's fear in that because you don't want to niche down because you're afraid that you're not going to be able to, have enough of a market share. But I think that that's so important. Then the question I have for you is, how important is it for the founders that you're working with to really look at, like, how many clients can we work with at a time? And is that something where they can figure out how to expand the number of clients they can work at? Because I think I heard you say before that most companies can work with, I think, 24 customers at a time or a year. Or does that make sense where I'm going with that?
Yeah, 100%. Listen, I think all businesses need to understand their capacity, right? So every business has a capacity. You have a capacity. I have a capacity. Our listeners here have a capacity, all right? That capacity might be really small or it might be very big, Okay. But what we've got to understand is we've got to understand our capacity. Now, again, this is more of a common mistake that I used to make. I used to believe that in order to expand my firm and scale up, I needed to maximize capacity before I hired somebody else. That was stupid. That was really stupid. And the reason why it's stupid is because if I got to near enough capacity, that means I'm going to have less time for strategic thinking, less time to increase my capacity, because guess what? I have to put things in place to make our company more available. But if I go right to the very end, if I'm like at 80% capacity, it's already too late. But then guess what? I may lose one of my best clients and then it drops suddenly off a cliff fall, right? That's no way of running a business. We've got to understand our capacity. And what that looks like is understanding the value. How much is an average client or customer worth to you? So what is the monetary volume of that, right?
Lifetime value, right?
Lifetime value, exactly.
And how much does it cost to acquire them?
So you got cost per acquisition, lifetime value, and then based on your capacity or how many people that are in your team, you can reverse engineer and figure out roughly how many clients that you can take on per year without compromising quality over quantity. Yeah. So this is the reason why, again, when we talk about scaling up, we've got to put things in place. We've got to increase our capacity before we even hit near enough to 80, 70 to 100%, because then it's just too late.
Well, one question I have for you is, when you're working with your customers, what is the red flag around, let's say you do $1 million a year in sales and you have a customer that makes up 50% of your revenue? Because like you just said a minute ago, Adam, what happens if that client leaves and you're in big trouble? Do you have like a benchmark or a working theory on your client saying you should never have a client that makes up more than X of the revenue? Then my second question, which is a little different, is how do you build up that capacity to be able to take on more clients?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you have a bit, and listen, I've been in these shoes before, so I can speak
I have
from
been
personal
too.
experience.
Yeah, and those clients, and it's really difficult to overcome.
And you know what? It's really interesting. I would sit up till like 2, 3 in the morning, worried if my client was ever going to leave me. Because guess what? I would be screwed. I would literally have to lay people off, and I would be screwed. Did you ever have those worries?
100%, without a doubt. Yeah. And I've lost those clients and had to lay people off and make changes and almost put us out of business with that. Exactly.
So then the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to think to ourselves, okay, first of all, we can't be in that vulnerable state. That is an absolute no-go. We cannot be in that vulnerable state. Okay. So what we've got to do, we've got to decide on, okay, so say for example, we've got this client. Now I'll go back to my client who's in the IT industry. He's got a client exactly that, by the way. Okay. Now the client's turned around and said, you don't need to worry. We're never going to, we need you, right? You don't need to worry about your contracts. We're going to keep you for a long time or whatever it is, okay? However, he's still having these nightmares, right? 2, 3 in the morning, and then is in trouble. So what we've got to do is, number one is first of all, we've got to make sure that if we enjoy working with that client and customer, okay, is that we've got to make sure that, number one, we're looking after them. We've got to make sure that we're looking after them. We've got to look after our best customers. And again, it's all about communication and making sure that they're happy, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 and feedback and so forth, so forth. Once we're kind of got a bit more peace of mind, we've still got to increase our capacity. So we've got to explore, number one, we've got to explore new revenue models. So how can we look at different revenue models rather than just depend on the one revenue model?
Excellent point.
Yeah. And that could be things like, for example, I teach this analogy of the product ecosystem. And what that looks like, Damon, is that basically looks like if we take, and we think about products, we think of most professional services industry have normally one product or one service. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. And whatever the price is, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, okay, it's normally one thing. A product ecosystem is effectively, there are going to be people, and you would have seen graphics of this, of the customer funnel where people discover you, whether it be through social media, website, Google, whatever it might be. And they'll go into the funnel, and at the very bottom would be your kind of your dream client. Those will be the high ticket. They love you. They're absolutely sold on you. But then there are people that might only get 1 level or 2 levels down. And for whatever reason, they're not ready to jump in and take whatever service, high ticket item that you have. Therefore, you've then got an opportunity to nurture that relationship. Okay. You may offer them a gift or a resource, a lead magnet, something that can give them a quick win. Like, let me give an example. I mentioned a quiz earlier on. Okay. It's a free resource for our clients. I've got a podcast, I've got a YouTube, whatever it is. These are all free resources. Have as many as you want. Knock yourself out. Okay. And then you'd have what we call a P for P, product for prospects. And what this generally is a low ticket item, generally under $500. And what this does is it gives so much massive value that they're like, well, if I'm getting this much value, imagine what it's going to be like if I'm actually working with this person. Okay, that's what a P for P is. It could be a video course, it could be a membership, whatever it might be. But it is something which has huge value, quick wins, but has huge profitability margins as well. So it could be something which is online, an online course, and it's automated. That makes sense?
Makes sense.
Third one could be your main package. But in your main package, you may have very limited capacity depending on who you are and what you do. So if we look at the IT consultant I'm working with, he has very limited capacity, which means he's premium, he's VIP, and this is our price point. There's no going away from that. If you're not ready, that's okay. We've got free resources for you, or P for P. And then afterwards, the last part of that ecosystem is what we call the after sale. Now, if you can imagine, when you go to a car showroom and you purchase, say, a brand new BMW, and they say, okay, well, Mr. Lembi, we want to offer you a warranty on your car. We're going to give you 3 years warranty or 5 years warranty. Now, in order to get that 3-year warranty, you have to take our service pack. Okay, the service pack, which is obviously to maintain your vehicle and so forth, so forth. A bit of a con, really, but the after sale is they've gone through everything. They trust you implicitly. They know that they know the results they're going to get. They know the transformation they've achieved, and they're more than likely to then, for coaches and consultants, it could be, say, a retreat. It could be for a law firm. It could be a retainer of some sort. So it could be some sort of ongoing support depending on what they're after, for example. So that is what a product ecosystem is.
And so what I hear you saying about the product ecosystem is that you should build or develop products that serve your existing clients, not necessarily trying to go outside of your client base to bring in more all the time, because you already have these raving fans. You have these people who love you, who believe in you and trust you. So build more stuff to service them, right?
So it could be for existing clients, but it would also be for new and existing clients, okay? Because when we go back to capacity, you're only going to have maybe, again, depending on what your profession is, you're only going to have a certain amount of a number that you can work with. Go back to the IT consultant, his number is 5.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
5. Very low number, but charging top premium up. All the other clients will go onto a wait list. If they want to work with him, they will go onto a wait list. So now he is developing a wait list of clients that are ready to buy. So when one of those clients, like when you ask me the question, what if I have a client that's 50% of my revenue? Okay, well, if that person jumps ship, then guess what? You've got clients which are already on your wait list. And guess what? It's on a first come, first serve basis. If you want to work with me, you have 48 hours to do so. Get in touch.
And if you could build up a business like that, it's like almost like a fear of missing out, right? People are like, now I get an opportunity to get you in. It's like going to a restaurant where it takes 3 weeks to get a reservation. It's because of the quality of the work they do.
You've got that. And a really good example of this is when, do you remember the time when Elon Musk stood up on stage and sold the idea of Tesla? Tesla 3, Tesla trucks. Okay, so Tesla trucks. So when he stood up on stage, and I think this was probably going back a couple of years ago, but he stood up on stage and he said, hey, so I'm creating a Tesla truck, okay? It's going to be a Tesla truck which doesn't need to stop. It will keep going for 6 to 8 weeks without needing to be charged. And it's going to have XYZ feature. It's going to have all of these bells and whistles. The deposit's $1,000. If we decide to make it,
I remember
who's
that.
in?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Right? Everyone puts their hand up. Everyone puts their hand up, right? That is what you call creating demand, okay? Now, what a lot of professional services industries, they come from a place of desperation. So you're either playing two games. You're playing the game of who can be the cheapest, or you can be...
Which is a race to the bottom.
Which is the race to bottom, or you can play the game of value, okay? I know which one I would prefer to sit in. I'm sure you know which one is. Now, the big challenge is that with all the industry that you're in, doesn't matter what industry you're in, at the bottom is where it's crowded down there. They're all scurrying ants, okay? If you can imagine that, they're all scurrying ants, all trying to fight for the best price, okay? It's the top that's lonely because there's very few of those at the top. They're all like, hey, down there, where are you guys? Right? And that's the real difference. It's all about positioning more than anything else. But again, it requires a mindset shift.
It does. And so let's wrap it up with that. I mean, Adam, you're awesome. I love the examples and everything we talked about. We talked about the importance of the mindset shift, how founders can get in their own way when it comes to exiting, the importance of noticing the red flags that could be available when it comes to scaling, and so much more. What is one more thing you want to leave our listeners with before we close out?
Yeah. One more thing I would probably say is don't leave it too late if you want to exit your business. Don't be that 60 or 70-year-old business owner that turns around and says, I'm just going to wind my business down. Because guess what? You deserve better. You're worth more than that. It's never too late. So go and figure out what that exit strategy is. You don't need to come to me. Go find someone that's already exited their business and get advice from them. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I do think they should come to you because that way we could jump up that rate from 18% to 40, 50%. And so leave us with where our listeners can connect with you at.
Yeah, appreciate that. So people can connect with me over on LinkedIn, of course, because that's my playground. And if you prefer, there's YouTube, of course. So we have a great audience over on YouTube, which we're developing right now. And the third thing actually is more of a gift, actually, Damon, if I may. We're actually creating a wait list for our community, a new community that we're building right now for founders and CEOs that want to share their biggest screw ups, to share their biggest mistakes that they made, but also, just for help and advice, whether it be marketing, branding, whatever it might be. But what we're doing is we're creating a wait list for that community right now. So what I'll do is I'll pass the links on to Damon. Yeah, I can pass that to you, and you can send that on to onto your listeners if they're interested in joining the wait list.
No, that's awesome. I mean, maybe I can get access into it because I got some pretty good mistakes I'd love to be able to share with your community over time. And so listeners, do me a favor. If you are a CEO or a founder who's stuck or doesn't have an exit plan, or maybe you know somebody who is stuck and doesn't have an exit plan, share this episode with them. I think there's a tremendous amount of value. Go in and check out the link that Adam's talking about here and check out his awesome podcast. It's called Business Strategist, right? It's a combination of both solos. He's so generous sharing his own information and bringing on other guests. There's so much wealth of knowledge there. And until next time, everybody, do me a favor, stay curious, keep learning. Have a great day. Thank you, Adam. You're awesome.